Today's all about a gas forge review. As a hobbyist, I know when you're looking at gas forges and what do I buy, there's a tremendous amount of options on the market. So today I'm going to review and give to you the information on the gas forge I purchased from Chile Forge, the Habanero. What am I going to cover today? Well, I'm going to go over Generation 1. Where did I start? And what are some of the reasons why I didn't like Generation 1? We're going to talk about Generation 2. Probably the only forge I'll ever buy again. Again, the Chile Forge, the Habanero. I will talk build specs. We're going to do a 360 drive-by. I'll do a startup procedure. I'll do a shutdown procedure. And we'll talk some talks, some temps, and if possible, go over any last minute things I may have forgotten to talk about in the beginning. What am I holding? Well, it's the packing slip. That's right, that's how they pack it. It looks like they pack it with love. I'll see you shortly. We'll talk a little bit about the build specs. So this is Generation 1. It might look familiar to you. This was purchased off of Etsy. It was a small starter gas dual burner forge, roughly 6 inches across, 12 inches in length. When I purchased this forge, it showed up with the loose ceramic fiber. It wasn't rigidized, it was a loose ceramic fiber, which I knew from the pictures. But I also knew when I brought it home that I was going to make it a bit safer by adding some refractory cement. One of the things I didn't like is the fact that once the temperatures of the ceramic fiber came to heat, they could fly in the air and cause some lung issues. So I was very interested in the safety issues. So the first thing I did is I created a mold and I mixed in some ceramic fiber and refractory cement, and I ended up with this. What did I end up with? Well, a forge that consumed a tremendous amount of gas, was again not very efficient, also dispersed tremendous amount of heat, a lot of heat loss, because there was pretty much no insulation. So using this forge, I kept burning the small tanks I would pick up from my local hardware store, and they would burn and burn and burn and burn. And I also noticed that using this forge, I got tons of scale or scaling. So the burn on this wasn't efficient enough. It had to burn with such high heat that the metal was not coming to temperature optimally, ending up with scale. We can talk a little bit about the neutral burn that you'll get from the Chile Habanero, but that's a lot more than we're going to go into discussion today. Ultimately, what I found out using this setup is that I burned a tremendous amount of gas. It was very inefficient, and it was extremely intense on how much heat it gave out because it didn't have any insulation. So those were some of the things that led me to go to market and explore the amount of gas forges on the market. The first thing that I was looking for is I knew that I wanted something that had to have rigidized material. I wanted to have ceramic insulation. I wanted it to be thick so that it could insulate the heat and be efficient. And I also wanted it to have a decent size opening that had a pass-through. This is roughly a 4-inch by 4-inch. So some of the things that I considered when I went to the market, which led me to the Chile Habanero. Let's slide on over there and talk about some of the build specs. So before we get into build specs, let's talk a little bit about customer service. When you get on the internet and you go out looking for a big purchase like a new upgraded forge, you do a lot of research and you find a lot of information on the internet. So I always recommend getting out there, Googling it, whatever search engine you use, most likely Googling it. Find out some information on gas forges in the market and some of the things you're looking for. One of the things I highlighted again was making sure the forge I bought already came with a ceramic rigidized material, which we'll talk a little bit more in a second. So when you get out there and you're doing tremendous amount of research and you're looking for that information, you'll find out other information about the type of customer service you might expect from a company. One name that kept popping up in research for Chile Forge was Stacy Starr. Turned out to be the lady that I had communication with when I purchased my forge from Chile Forge. Looks like Stacy's been working there for a long time. Amazing customer service. Again, this is manufactured in Texas, USA, but I was impressed of how much information that I was able to get quickly by or through Stacy, and how wonderful it was and pleasurable it was to speak with Stacy. So how you doing out there, Stacy? Now, after that, you're going to want to talk a little bit about customer service, support, follow-up, amazing stuff. I had a few follow-up questions. It was easy to reach out and get the follow-up that I needed. So let's talk a little bit about the build specs for the Habanero. So from a port opening perspective, we'll talk measurements. First we'll talk about height, which is 3 5/8. We're talking width is 6 5/8. You notice on the outside they have a piece that comes out and extends. That's roughly about 1.5 inches of material coming out. Prevents actually flame rising, which is really nice. From the inside, the dimensions are 16 inches. They have a ceramic tile that they include with the purchase. That's about 16 inches from the length. If you have 1.5 inches on each side, you're roughly going to be under 19 inches. Just about, let's say, from end to end, with including these end pieces that are on both sides. We'll see that in the 360 view. On the interior, it's 6 inches high. Now that leads us into the conversation of the rigidized ceramic material. 6 inches here leaves you the 2 inches, and we're going to see that from the back side when we do the 360 view. 2 inches of the ceramic fiber that's been rigidized is right. It's 6 inches, 8 inches to the top. Oops. So let's talk a little more about the material itself. The ceramic fiber, it comes rigidized. That means that it's been coated with an ITC 100 refractory. That's a lot of information. I would Google it to find out what that means. But what that means is the particulates, when they come up to temperature, because it's a hardened substrate, they're not going to be flying, or more apt to be flying out and falling into the respiratory system. I always recommend, when using forges in a well-ventilated area, but get more into the health concerns if needed, do your own research. One of the things I was concerned with was safety. Now, just that safety concern alone, the added benefit of the 2 inches of that ceramic fiber is tremendous insulation. It's an extremely efficient forge because it's able to insulate that heat and bring it up to temperature. With both of these Diablo burners running around 7 to 8 psi, you can probably get optimal 7 to 10 minutes of 2100 degrees. It will get up to 2300 degrees or forge welding temperature. So let's talk a little bit about the Diablo burners. Let's see if I can slightly turn that around. These burners come with an installation kit. I believe they call that a connection kit. So the connection kit is the tubes that you see. Most of this is already pre-connected. You have a few fasteners that you have to put together. It's a 2-box delivery. It's pretty easy to put together, connecting the tubes. The burners themselves slide into the ports on top. I'll slide out a burner, hold it up, and bring the camera over. You can see the hole at which the burner slides, the craftsmanship of the burner. You can see the choke, the air choke is a slide carb up and down to regulate oxygen with the gas after you get the combustion, for you to maintain, let's say, a nice neutral burn. So the Habanero is a 2-burner, comes with 2 of the Diablo burners. The nice thing about this is that it's an independent, so I can run 1 burner or 2 burners. The connection kit also comes with a nice valve unit with good display and a lockout feature so that you can't have any gas. So let's do a quick 360 view of the Chile Habanero, and then we will do a startup procedure and shutdown. probably get the best view on this side, the ceramic rigidized fiber. I'm very impressed at how well made this is. The welds on it, everything on this screams extreme high quality, well manufactured, including this nice little slide out ledge so that you can place longer piece of metals through your pass-through when you're working with the forge. I'm really amazed at how efficient this forge works. I pretty much work between 3 to 5 psi. I'll most of the time use one of the burners. If I'm working some large pieces, I'll use two, but typically I'm using a single burner around 3 to 5 psi, and it lasts a tremendous amount of time. I'll probably need to put an update to the video to determine if I just use that much gas, how long of time I could actually get out of a 15, 20, 50 gallon tank of gas. Again, the efficiency alone is what I was most impressed by, but the fact that it came with the rigidized material was a big safety concern of mine from a consumer on the market. So let's do a startup procedure. Alright, we're back. We're going to start up the forge. Oops, and we're going to do a little startup procedure, and let's talk a bit about the gas. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to open up the valve for the gas tank. Right now, if you see, there's zero gas pressure. That means there's nothing in the gas line. That means there's nothing coming out of the gas tank. And we know that because currently right now this valve is closed. If I actually want to allow gas to come through the regulator, I would be screwing this in. And if I wanted to close, I'm going to be screwing this out. Now, before we actually allow gas to get to the regulator, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the gas valve on top of the tank. When I do that, there'll be zero pressure passing through this valve. It's going to remain at zero. So let's go ahead and open up the gas tank. And at this point, we essentially have an open valve on the gas tank, but we have zero pressure running through the gas valve that leads to the burners on the forge. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up the lock valve and thread it back, and I'll be screwing this in until about 3 psi registers. And we're going to keep going, and we're going to see the gas start to register on the valve, and we're around 4 psi. So about 4 psi is what I'm going to do to start the forge. And when I typically run the forge, I may leave it at 4, run it at 5, or go down to 3. But I typically light the forge anywhere from 3 to 4 psi. That's all you need to get the forge lit, the burners to be fired up and going. You don't need to run, and you should not be running any more gas. Please read the recommended safety precautions before you get started. So now we know we have the gas valve open on the tank, and we know the regulator is going to push out 3-4 pounds of PSI continuously as the regulator valve has been screwed into that amount. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to light the forge. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get this thing fired up. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the lighter lit. So we want to first apply the gas. Now what we don't want to do is light the gas and try to get it and place it up into the burner porthole. We want to allow the flame to be neutral in the middle. We don't want the flame to be raised up into the burner porthole. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire up the flame. We're going to place that in the middle of the burner, and we're going to slowly open up one of the gas valves, and we'll get combustion. We're going to pull that out. Now we have a lit forge, and we have one burner going at a time. If we wanted to open up the second burner, What we should do is, on the second burner, we should actually open up the choke valve to allow oxygen into the second burner, and then apply and hit a gas. I typically only run with one burner at a time. If you're going to just run with one burner, obviously close down the gas valve and also close down the choke. So make sure the choke is closed if you're running with just one burner. The choke is closed on the second burner. Also read the recommended settings for the valve on the choke for the length. This is what allows in the oxygen to mix with the fuel after you get combustion. And we talk about a neutral flame. If you want to look that up, that's the type of flame that's an optimal flame to get minimal scaling when you're forging. The Chile Habanero has an extremely efficient neutral flame. So when you bring it up to operating temperature, it doesn't require a lot of gas to keep it that way. The valve is still maintaining at 4 psi. So at 4 psi is what I can continue to work on for some of my smaller projects on thinner metal. So now that we have the startup procedure, what we're going to do is just let it burn. I'm going to go ahead and give you a view, and then we're going to show you a shutdown procedure. And that's all you need to get started. I'm, again, extremely impressed with the Chile Habanero. I couldn't be more impressed with this purchase. I've had so much fun with this already. Can't wait, if you get one of these things, to enjoy it as much as I have. So let's show you the shutdown procedure. I'll do you a little flame view. You can see it's starting to get to temperature. When the forge is at perfect operating temperature, it has a nice glow or hue, and it's absorbed into the rigidized material. The temperature on the outside of the forge remains a lot lower, obviously, than the temperature on the inside.